Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to continue our look at painting the Necrons from the Indomitus box set. And in this video we are going to work on the cloak of the model. And for anybody who's curious as to how the main armor was done, you can check out the Necron Warrior video that is appearing now. You can check that one out as how I accomplished that. Basically all I'm going to do is get the model started by applying a layer of Nuln Oil gloss all over the surface of the model, and this is just basically to tint and shade the surfaces. And basically I'm not applying it too heavily. I'm being somewhat generous with it, as I do want to get into some of the little nooks and crannies, like in the spine and the hips and anywhere there's like little doodads and little pipes and stuff like that. But otherwise we do not want this gathered up on any of the flat surfaces like the elbow, the little join between the elbow and the shoulder pads, and of course the cloak itself. We don't really want too much value on that. We don't even touch the gun at this point. Volpoulus Pink is next, and we're also going to use some contrast medium. We are going to mix this sort of like 2-to-1 or even almost 1-to-1. It's really quite a bit of Volpoulus Pink I'm throwing onto my palette here, and I'm kind of pretty much matching it with medium. Basically, I just want to thin this out so that it is not so saturated when we apply it to the surface, and we can slowly build up to the color we want, instead of just applying it in a very heavy fashion, in which contrast normally gets used. As you can see, we are applying this in a glazing fashion, and as I'm laying this down, I'm also not applying it quite as starting at too far down each of those little kind of, I don't know, streamers of these plates. I don't know what the heck these are. But you can see here I'm just trying to pull off some of the excess color off the flat areas. And I'm also going to do the backside, but we're not going to concentrate too much on the backside. Just the bare colors that kind of get thrown on the back just for completion. And then I'm going to do a second layer once that first layer is dry, and you'll see that I am starting a little further up the cloak. And I'm also going for a bit of a gradient along the cloak, so it gets a little further down, closer to the front of the model, and coming up higher as we build up towards the spine, as you may notice. Again, once that layer is dry, we're going to go for a third layering. And here you'll see I'm just going this top two little, I don't know, things, these little dangly bits. I don't know what these are. But again, we can see that we are just simply building up the color. And again, because we have the color in a thinned out fashion like this, we can create a gradient of color as we go. And as long as we're applying it in a somewhat controlled fashion and we're not overly saturating the area with this color, we can slowly build this effect up. And in fact, we can push it further and further. Here I'm just demonstrating that I'm actually doing the back sides as well. So just for completion's sake, but otherwise it's not a huge issue. And really our main concern is that outward facing facets of the cloak. Next, we are going to work on the little blade, as again, I want to keep a somewhat consistent theme throughout these Necrons, and I do plan on doing every Necron in this box, but pretty much how I go about it will be relatively same. So as I do produce videos and tutorials on these models, there will be some repetition, as it were. With the blade, I'm applying it in a somewhat haphazard fashion. I'm also only going on that the flat facet of the blade. I'm not doing the cutting edge. And here you can see I'm being pretty selective as to where I'm allowing some of that color to pool up, because I do want to have that to have a bit of a randomness, sort of like what we did for the Skorpekh's power weapon. And again, if you are wanting to duplicate what was done on that video, that is pretty much how you could go about it. Just take this color, especially if you have the contrast system. These are transparencies, and so these work on top of this metallic very nicely. Talisar Blue is next with contrast medium. Again, we're going to mix these probably closer to 1-to-1. It's actually probably a little less than 1-to-1. It's probably more closer to 2-to-1, 2 blue to 1 thinner. And then here I'm using my detail brush, and I'm just doing kind of a single like upper left hand side of each of those little plates, and just hitting with some of the blue. And I'm concentrating more blue up towards the arm and a little less blue as we build downwards. So we're getting a bit of a slight gradient kind of going on. And this kind of coloring that I'm doing on these little faces is kind of like heat treated or heat tempered steel. And so we're kind of going for a bit of that kind of vibe, kind of like what we had done on the Skorpekh. And so I'm going to run with that theme throughout the Necrons, and you're going to see this motif repeated elsewhere on models. So just a little bit of a spoiler for everybody out there wondering how this whole little battle group is going to end up getting done. That is pretty much how it's going to be. So you can see here with this little color here that we're highlighting or basically shading these areas, just creating more value and interest. We could have also used a color shift paint that went from this blue to magenta, as it were, purpley tones. We could have also used a color shift metallic on top of these areas, and if you want to go that route, by all means do that. But for anybody else out there who, basically could have just sprayed the model with lead belcher and then begin applying these colors, that can also work as well. Just because I've used a chrome paint, it doesn't mean that you have to, although I am a big fan of the chrome paint and how it looks, monkey see, monkey do, I suppose. Here again, I'm just simply laying a little bit of the blue down onto the surface. Again, just kind of being a haphazard, allowing it to pool up just a little bit here and there. Again, just to get some color variation and some visual interest onto these areas. Again, it kind of looks like a bit of a heat tempering, which is, I'm kind of playing into here. So, it just looks kind of fun and cool. And it, has this really nice look once it's all settled and dried out and ready to go. Next, we're going to go with some Amethyst Alchemy. This is from scale 75. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette. We're going to use our detail brush. And with this, we are basically just going to do an edging along the uppermost portion of the little plates that are the cloak. I don't know what these are called. What would you call these little plates? This cloak. I don't know what this is. But either way, so what it ends up being is more or less doing an edging on the upper portion as well as the left-hand side of the little plates. And that's really all I'm doing with this color here, is just basically catching these edges and bringing it out. I had considered doing something with that little circle that's inside each of the little plates, or even laying a little bit of highlight onto those. And in fact, if I was, wanting to demonstrate something a little bit more cautiously and being a little bit more deliberate, I suppose we could have applied a highlight in those. But I also was considering doing something else in those little circles, so we might go to that later on, who knows. White Alchemy is next. This is from scale 75. This is a really fantastic bright metallic color. It's essentially a metallic with white in it, and I'm holding the model upside down to my perspective and doing the other opposite side of each of those little facets. So I'm concentrating more of the brushstroke along the bottom edge and along the when you orient it the correct way, it would be on the right hand side. Of course, again, we could have done the inner circle as well, but left that alone. And basically, this is just to redefine those edges of each of those little plates, because again, as we laid the contrast down, it does pretty much give you a uniform tinting over the surface, and this is just to bring that edge back. And of course, because it is chrome, it is really quite bright, but when you pull this like kind of off to the light, you really catch those edges, which is really nice and is a huge benefit. Here, basically, I'm taking a little bit more of the Volpoulus Pink. I've thinned it down just simply with water, and I'm just giving the armor plates another layering of color. I just wanted a little bit more of this magenta tone running through this cloak. I wasn't happy with how much silver I was looking at, so I wanted to push it just a little bit further. And of course, when you are working in small gradients like this on a model and you've thinned the color way down, that gives you the excellent opportunity to control how far you push an effect. Yes, it does take you longer to do, but it allows you a greater degree of control. Here I'm just simply using that Amethyst Alchemy to do the edging on that blade. I don't bother doing the cutting edge with the White Alchemy. I didn't really feel like it was necessary, although if you're following along and doing this exactly as how I'm doing it, feel free to actually do that cutting edge with the White Alchemy. But there it is. That is the cloak. I'm kind of thinking of something with those little circles. I might leave them, but otherwise we're going to carry on with the rest of this model. I think in the next video, I think we're going to work on something fun for that little cord that runs out of his spine that leads into the gun. I'm thinking of something like kind of a pulsing sort of energy. Maybe something that allows kind of like the Necron is powering it with his spine. I don't know. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below and you'll be taken off to a magical website called Patreon, where there are varying tiers to support at. And a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes and they will take care of you.